Aw shit, it's your boy, Dirtbag Dan, and it's blog time, ladies and gentlemen, here to bitch about one of my favorite things on the planet, once again, mixed martial arts. Yesterday was a fucking huge day for mixed martial arts. The announcement of the entire UFC 205 card. Holy shit, easily the greatest card in the history of the UFC. 3 title fights on the main card. You got the pound for pound best woman in the mix, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Plenty of New York on the card, plenty of East Coast on the card. You got Frankie Edgar on the card, Chris Weidman on the card. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Woodley for the title. Holy shit. And of course, the big one, the one that everybody's talking about, Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight strap. Which brings me to the point of this whole blog. Once again, we're focusing on UFC as entertainment versus UFC as a legitimate sport. This Conor McGregor Eddie Alvarez fight puts us in an interesting position once again, where we have to question whether or not the UFC is trying to be seen as a sport, or whether the UFC is simply interested in making money by providing entertainment for the fans. I'm torn, man. I'm like my wife when I ask her what she wants for dinner. I know I want something, but I don't know what I want. One thing that I think was missing from the last blog that I did about the CM Punk fight was accountability on the part of the UFC. I don't think that the shareholders would be arguing with the position to put CM Punk on the main card. Obviously, the guy has more Twitter followers than the entire UFC. That's going to factor into your decision about whether or not you put him on a card. You know how I feel about that from my last blog. I think it did a disservice to the sport of the UFC. Somewhere along the lines of how you can watch professional wrestling on UFC Fight Pass. I think that muddies the water in a very confusing way, especially when you're trying to make the distinction between being an actual sport and being sports entertainment. I guess the point I'm trying to make is by allowing Conor McGregor to skirt his responsibility as the featherweight champ of the UFC at 145, even though he had already agreed to, and Dana White had already told Jose Aldo that if he beat Frankie Edgar, or if Frankie Edgar beat Jose Aldo, the winner of that fight was going to fight Conor to unify the strap. That was the decision that was made by the UFC, and all of the fighters involved were informed. UFC 205 becomes available. Obviously, Dana White is trying to stack this card with as many fights and as many fighters, as many big names, as many stars as humanly possible. And as a fan, I'm fucking in love with this card, top to bottom. Holy shit. It's amazing. So many of these fights, even in the prelims, could headline fight nights, you know? Yoel Romero versus Weidman, or Frankie Edgar versus Jeremy Stevens. Holy shit, that's a scrap. That's a scrap I want to see. Obviously, there's arguments to be made on both sides. If you're Conor McGregor, you're saying something to the effect of, let me do whatever the fuck I want, because whatever I want is what's going to put butts in seats. It's what's going to put buys on pay-per-views. Now, the reason I bring this up is yesterday, along with the announcement of the 205 card, there was another big announcement that came out of Brazil that's kind of flown under the radar as of now. This is Wednesday morning. This shit happened on Tuesday afternoon. Jose Aldo came out and said that he wants out of his UFC contract and that he's going to retire from the sport of MMA because he's so upset about how the UFC is handling this Conor McGregor situation. Again, letting him skirt his responsibility, going against the agreement that they already made. On the flip side, Conor McGregor has done more to bolster the UFC featherweight division in the few years that he's been in the mix than Jose Aldo did as the champion of that division for 7 years or something. So he's been able to do a lot more with regards to bringing attention to the UFC, which ultimately is going to help legitimize it as a sport. It's a double-edged sword. I don't know, again, like I said earlier, I don't know who I side with in this argument. I don't know how I feel about it. I see what's happening. I see the belts losing value. I see fights like Nick Diaz versus George St. Pierre having so much more value than either of those fighters fighting for a strap in their respective weight classes, because it's a fight people want to see. That's the kind of shit that people tune in for. Jose Aldo said that's a sport. I don't fight for money. And Conor McGregor, time and time again, has made money the, premier focus of not only his ambitions as a fighter, but also his position in the league. His ability to call shots is completely based on the amount of money that he makes the UFC and not the strap that he holds and not the fights that he's won. So, am I happy about watching Eddie Alvarez fight Conor McGregor at 155? Oh, fuck yeah. I can't wait to see that fight. Obviously, I'm invested in the fight. I like the fight. Do I think it's fair to Jose Aldo? No, it's not fair at all. Do I think it's fair to fans? Yeah. I don't know. Again, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you feel like Dana White is screwing the pooch and fucking with the integrity of the sport. Or do you feel like letting Conor call the shots here is just, considering the amount of attention he's brought the UFC? Do you think Jose Aldo's a pussy for retiring? Or do you think he has a good point and is trying to protect the integrity of mixed martial arts? Let me know what you fuckers think. I don't even know. I don't know. I just made this because I don't know. I'm so confused.